Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. Today's episode is going to be amazing. I can just feel it already talking with our guest behind the scenes before we start recording. And we're talking about retraining your brain. That's right. We're talking about stress, burnout, how to avoid those things, maybe how to leverage them for your success. I don't know. We'll find out. But Erin Harrington, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here with you, Brandon. Thank you.
So this is, everyone's heard of burnout, I think. Most of us has probably experienced it on some level. I know. We'll get there. But retraining your brain, that's an interesting topic that we're going to dive into. Can you tell me, unpack this for me. What does it mean to retrain your brain in the sense of burnout? How did you come to this topic?
Well, that's a great question. So at the height of my career, I was the top sales leader at a MarTech startup that went public. So as the top sales achiever, I helped this company have a very successful IPO, which was fantastic. But then I burnt out really hard. I had pretty severe back pain, low energy, all sorts of things like this. And to the point where I actually took a leave of absence from work. And during that leave of absence, I actually went out to the wilderness. I went to Alaska and I was living in San Francisco at the time. I went to Alaska, and in that time, all my pain completely went away. And so it was my first clue that there was a relationship between burnout and the physical symptoms that I was experiencing. And so I set out on this journey over the next several years, right? It's been a couple decades, not quite a couple decades, maybe 15 years. But I set out to figure out how to retrain my brain. And a lot of it lies in your autonomic nervous system. So we have our central nervous system and we have our autonomic nervous system, and that controls emotions, it controls breathing, all the automatic processes in our life, right? And within this autonomic nervous system, there's your stress response and there's your relaxation response. And what I learned was that most high achievers actually are stuck in that stress response, which makes them less efficient. It causes burnout. It causes difficulty with relationships, all sorts of work-life imbalance, things like that. And so in the process of trying to figure this out for myself, I went down, sort of the path of learning how to retrain my brain to get into that relaxation response, which is also known as your executive response, where all the magic happens, all the great stuff happens. And so now I've been working with my clients for a number of years with these same tools and techniques, and the results are amazing. People are able to have more time for the things that they love and be more efficient and more effective and more successful, all without spinning their wheels less.
That's quite the tease. And I definitely want to get there. I want to start to unpack how we can do that. But I'm also curious because you said this is common in high achievers, which is, welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time, I'm sure you are a high achiever if you're listening. But that's a lot of us, especially as entrepreneurs. This has to be self-induced. Well, why do we do this to ourselves, and how can we identify that we're doing it?
Well, the problem, right? Let's start with that. The problem is that high achievers often struggle because they tend to push through stress. When you're pushing through stress, that's putting yourself more into that stress response, number one. So that keeps your brain stuck in that survival mode. So let me just clarify. Stress response was designed originally to sort of protect us out in the wild from predators. not to manage day-to-day life, right? So high achievers struggle because they push through this stress and because they compartmentalize work and life, generally speaking, which naturally creates sort of this tension and competing priorities. And the third thing is high achievers strive for perfection because that's just sort of inherent in who we are. We want to do everything really well. And to that end, it often causes us to sacrifice our own well-being and time for the things that we love.
Well, those things aren't important because there's always later. We can get to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I feeding into it? I think I'm actually making the problem worse. Okay, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. So then talk to me. Once we hopefully avoid burnout, we don't go that far as you have. I know I personally have too. If we don't want to go all the way down that road to see that there's a better way, what are some things we can do maybe in a couple of minutes a day, or where do you start with people to get them into that executive brain?
Right. So the first thing that I do is I help my clients align their goals with their values, their inherent values. The name of my company is Soul Values. So there's that. And once they align their values with their goals, they're kind of already tapping into that parasympathetic executive state. So just by doing that, right, gets you closer to that. And I've also learned over the years of developing this that the more things that you do to support yourself on a daily basis, these micro actions, right, they help you get into that parasympathetic executive state. So, for example, brain dumps, right? So spend 5 minutes each morning writing down tasks, worries, things like that. That helps clear mental clutter and put it into a category off to the side and help you kind of move forward with the actions that you want. The other, another technique is, for example, so in my book, The Whole Life Planner, I have these daily pages, and on the daily pages that my clients use that take about 5 minutes, right? One of the things that is in there is distractions to avoid, right? When you consciously identify the distractions that you want to avoid, some kind of magic happens, right? Because you actually are able to avoid those distractions. And another element of this technique is I'll support myself by. So what are the things on a daily basis? Like today, for example, let's say you have a really busy day, you have a bunch of meetings, you have to type up a bunch of reports, and you have to be home for your kid's 10th birthday, right? So how do you make all of this happen? Well, tiny micro actions such as going outside for a 5-minute breather, taking some deep breaths, whether it's exercising, whether it's getting out in nature, because we all have so I can't tell you exactly what's going to work for you. I know what works for me in order to reset my brain. But these tiny little actions are what ultimately add up both in short-term results and long-term results, right? So you get on a daily basis, you're more effective. You're able to manage your time. You're not spinning quite as much, which means that instead of something taking 8 or 15 hours, maybe it takes 1 hour because you're spinning a lot less, right? We're not efficient in that stress response. And so those are two or three of the recommended sort of daily actions. In the download, people can access the Stress Less Blueprint. And in there, I sort of describe how to take these 5-minute a day micro actions to achieve more and stress less.
That's awesome. And since you mentioned it, let me toss it on the screen. Your website, stresslessblueprint.com. If you're listening, it's in the show notes, watching or listening, wherever you are, it's down there below. So thank you, Erin, for that and for talking about it. I'm curious how you help people identify these micro actions though? Because you said, you can't tell us what it is. You have to find it on your own. What I've seen is, especially when you're in this sort of burnout cycle or this hyper stress cycle, it's hard to just pause and even realize what does light you up or what does energize you. Is there a process you take people through? Is it in the download, first of all, to help identify what those things for you individually are?
That's usually in this download. What I do is I teach people how to use the 5-minute a day system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go as deep in how to identify those micro actions, although it's pretty straightforward. You simply have to think about what lights you up. What do you do that lights you up? What makes you feel better on a daily basis? So, for example, I know I have to get on the floor and do, some Pilates and yoga every day as part of my daily prescription. I also like to get out on the trail nearby, even if it's for 10 minutes. I do that. I also like to eat healthy food that I cook. Those are things that, again, help my brain sort of get into that relaxation response. So whether it's physical stuff, deep breathing, there's breathing techniques that you can do. There's sort of, gratitude. Let's just take a step back and be really, really simplistic on this. Just by stating your gratitude on a daily basis, that one tiny thing, if there was one tiny thing that your listeners could do, that literally puts your brain into that executive state by identifying a gratitude. And there's science to back this up.
That's a great tip. I'm trying to think. For me, it would be, I would love to smoke a brisket every day, but I would need way more friends because that's too much meat to serve. So maybe once a week, I'll do that one.
That's awesome.
I'll see what I could do. I want to
awesome.
go back though. You said before the first step is you help people align their goals to their values. And while we don't do that with our clients necessarily, we make them understand what their core values as a business, like as a company are, before we plan out the rest of the company. So what I have found is that most people, they might say they have core values and they might, identify one or two, but once you really clearly identify it as a company, your goals actually tend to change. What you think you wanted sometimes just evaporate and you want something completely different. How does that work for when you take your clients through that process personally? Do you notice that these high achievers maybe even want less in some cases?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very common occurrence for my clients is they align with their purpose and what they want to achieve in life, be it relationships, spirituality, health is a big one, health and well-being. And of course, success in work, right? Because this is what we do. We're high achievers. And then, so in that process, I have found that many of my clients pivot significantly in the work that they do, and they have greater results because they're able to sort of like identify the core things that are super important to them and sort of drop self-perceived requirements on themselves. Like that's an important part of it, is letting go of these like perceived limitations or roadblocks or things that you must do in order to be successful. And so I'd say most of my clients have major breakthroughs with that, and they realize that ultimately, so they all want to have more time for things that matter and things that they love, right? But they don't know how to get there. And so what's really magical about my solution is I encourage people, business, I have a lot of business experience. So I have business experience and I have well-being experience. So I'm able to help them meet their goals while also finding that time, because finding that time directly feeds the results on the other end. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But that's the one thing that we kind of push to the side as entrepreneurs and as high achievers, because we think it's just not important right now.
Absolutely. This is a very big mindset shift that I walk my clients through to help them achieve a sense of wholeness. Ultimately, that's the goal. They want to succeed in work and they want to succeed in life. And so what does that wholeness look like?
I love that you use the word wholeness. I don't know how you feel about the word balance, but I personally hate it. The word wholeness makes so much more sense, because you can't separate one from the other, right? You live and work. It's not like you can put one to the side to work and then put the other to the side to live. So, yeah, thank you for that, Erin. This has been phenomenal. I love this conversation, and it's so important, because I work with so many entrepreneurs who are at some level of burnout, and these simple little tools that you described, plus your stress less blueprint.com, is going to be a great way for people to take that little tiny first step. If you had one question that you wanted the people listening to this show, to ask themselves so that they could take action on this, or just maybe evaluate where they are in their lives and their business right now, what would you want them to ask as a takeaway from this episode?
I would want them to ask themselves what does the concept of whole life harmony look like for them? So forget any limiting thoughts. What does that concept of wholeness look like in an ideal for you? Because it is achievable. It's achievable for every single one of us. And in fact, it's far more achievable than we believe through these simple hacks. So I would ask them that, like, what do you want? Because you can have it.
I love it. And just for the record, I happen to be looking at Erin's website right here, the Stress Less Blueprint. It says work-life harmony on there. She did not change the language because I said I hate the word balance, or to fit in with this show. So, Erin, thank you so much for being here and for being an amazing guest.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure. I appreciate it, Brandon.
For those of you watching and listening, you need to take action on this. If there's any sort of stress or burnout in your life that is unmanaged or unregulated, maybe you don't even know about it, please take the first step. I promise you I can speak to that. Erin already spoke to it for her burnout journey. It's the real deal. And don't go down that path if you can prevent it. There is a way to achieve harmony. Excuse me, I'm so used to saying harmonious. Harmony in business and life. And that's what this whole show is about. So subscribe. We want to see you back tomorrow. We put out 5 episodes a week to help you build a more harmonious, there it is, business and life. We'll see you tomorrow.